Do you think there's still interest in becoming a musician?
I think it's lesser.
Why?
Because it's not fashionable anymore.
Why?
Because now the hot new thing is being a TikToker.
Oh, okay.
Jokes aside.
No, I know what you mean. It's being like an influencer, right?
Being
rather
an
than
influencer.
Rather than a musician.
Yeah, because and it pains me to say it, but in a way, the influencers of now kind of took the space of the artists of the past. When it comes to mediatic presence,
celebrity status rather than the artistry.
Yeah, not in influence or in legacy, because we're talking about some things that are less meaningful.
I agree.
But now the space that they used to occupy in society, it has changed quite dramatically.
Yeah, so let's begin from there.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think the change happened?
Such a layered issue.
No, just give me your most basic approach to the whole, to your answer.
Okay.
Because it's impossible. I know exactly what do you mean by that.
Yeah,
this is a very, very deep and wide topic to discuss.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are many layers to it. So try to give us a broad scope.
Okay, let's point at one. Okay, I think one of the culprits of the whole thing, even it correlates to what I said before, is the advent of social media as we know it.
Okay.
I think before, for you to have a media presence and for you to have your voice heard, you needed to be an artist of sorts. You could be on the television, you could be a movie star, you could be a musician.
But one can make the argument that being on TV doesn't make an artist.
Regardless, let's not go that deep into that point. But nowadays, the advent of social media, let's say YouTube,
yes,
allows for any person with a camera, basically any person with a phone, because now phones are camera, microphones, and studios, everything in
basically
one.
speaking, yeah.
You can make yourself a public person with what you got in your pocket. Just play the game correctly, a stroke of luck here and there, and you can. No artistry necessary for it to happen. So, in the end, since the influencers became big media people or big known faces, a lot of the new kids in the block, they kind of aspire to become that, because they see the recognition, they see the influence, they see the public impact, and they want that, not necessarily the way to get there. They just want the result.
But that has been the case for everything since before. You think of how many people wanted to become a movie star when they were children, just because they saw, I don't know, Tom Cruise being famous and popular and rich.
Mm-hmm.
That hasn't changed. The thing is that, and look, I can even make the counter argument to what you said as well. How many of those big names on social media are actually doing some form of music? Like several of those drummers, for example, are huge. They have a huge presence online.
Mm-hmm.
They're playing the game in that regard. They're doing exactly what you're discussing, or you're describing as being the interest of the new young blood.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Robbie, how to have you here? Nice to have you here.
Hey,
Yes.
Robbie.
So I think I know, and I agree with you that it's no longer happening as often as before.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the way that you're framing the reasoning for it to happen or move into this direction, towards this direction, is not necessarily the reason why it's happening.
I don't think it's the reason, but I think it's a reason. The thing is that before, even though this phenomenon that I described has always been a thing, since most of the people that would have recognizable faces were artists before, people wanted to be artists, not because they wanted to do music or because they wanted to be actors or because they wanted to do anything of the sorts. They wanted the result. But the way to get those results of recognition before was through doing art. Now it isn't.
But before, for example, let's say Letterman, this guy, the anchorman, he wasn't an actor. He was just an anchorman.
Yes.
And he was super famous, popular.
I think it kind of falls into the category of actors to a degree.
But that's not artistry, man. That's just being a host. That's charisma and knowing how to deal with and handle crowds. He's basically a speaker.
But look, in the public eye, he's considered an artist.
No, he's considered a celebrity. That's a very big difference.
But the actors are considered artists.
Yes, the thing is that among those aspirational roles where artist, or artistic endeavors
Mm-hmm.
and artist-oriented people.
Mhm.
Yes, but it's not that, if that makes sense to you.
Mm-hmm.
But I know where you're going with this,
Mhm.
because you're not necessarily wrong. I'm simply trying to problematize your proposition,
Yeah.
because in reality you're not necessarily wrong. Because in my opinion, one of the reasons why people are no longer aspiring to become musicians is because I get what you're saying, and it's because you don't see the position of the musician as being someone of actual good report.
Yeah. Of glamour.
Is no longer glamorous as it used to be. Even back in the early 2000s, you still have some form of mystique and presence and this larger than life aura.
But it was already the dying.
But it was the
dying
last
stages.
stretch, because think in terms of Muse, for example. Muse was huge in the early 2010s,
Yeah.
gigantic. Also think of other acts a little bit more on the pop instrument. Katy Perry was the behemoth.
Mm-hmm.
Katy Perry, Taylor Swift, yeah, she's been since then.
Mm-hmm.
Taylor Swift wasn't as big, but she was already a name to be reckoned with.
Yeah.
So Bruno Mars,
Yeah.
he was uber popular, man,
Yeah.
and he was some form of aspirational role.
Mm-hmm.
But something happened in the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Because up until that era, and that's when I got started in the whole music production business,
Mm.
I can tell you that plenty of people arriving to my doors were inspired by someone.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that they were chasing clout. Even the most blatantly driven by the pursuit of fame and success always had at least an artist to look up to.
Mm-hmm.
But today, I don't think it's happening.
I think it's also because it hasn't been renewed, the cycle. Because
That's a good point.
let's say Taylor Swift.
She's
Okay.
still the same.
15 years ago, Taylor Swift was inspiring quite a lot of young kids to want to become like her.
Yeah.
The thing is, those kids grew up. And the phase to dream of the artistry and stuff like that is usually when you're young. Later on, if you decided to pursue that career, you're probably already on that track, but you're not with dreams of grandeur. You're just at it.
Yes.
Since there are no new artists catering to newer generations, you don't have that happening anymore. We simply got stuck, basically.
Yeah, that's a good point. But for example, some of the guys that I worked with back in that era were inspired by Guns N' Roses.
Mm.
By that point, it was almost 20 years old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true.
So I don't necessarily speaking see that as being the problem. I think that a good chunk of us who grew up in the 2000s
Mm.
and late 90s, the image of the musician was still kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
The guy with the guitar still had some form of leveragement.
Yeah.
Something that little by little got replaced by the guy doing this,
Mm-hmm.
mumbling.
This
Or this. Yeah.
that thing. Yeah.
Yeah, mumbling rather than actually singing.
Mm-hmm.
The drummer got replaced with the formulaic beat.
Mm-hmm. The beat maker.
Not even the beat maker, man, because who thinks of them? They think of the guy who is mumbling on top of the beat.
True. Yeah.
So I'm trying to make it. I'm simplifying it,
Yeah.
or just to get to the core, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a form of deconstruction,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll see that they removed, and by they I mean the mass media, the powers that be, the promotion of the idealized version of the musician.
Mm-hmm.
Think of Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah.
He was super popular in the 80s,
Mm-hmm. Huge.
huge, and he was one of the many guitar heroes of his era.
Mm-hmm.
How many people got inspired? How many kids didn't go to Guitar Center to buy their first guitar just by seeing a photo of Eddie?
Mm-hmm.
Just think of the cover for Van Halen 1.
Yeah, that's enough.
I want to be one of those guys. I don't even know what they do, but I want to be one of those guys.
Yeah.
It stopped happening.
Mm-hmm.
MTV started to promote less and less that kind of music that has that aspirational role. But you still got some bands that inspired plenty of people in the 90s. How many people got inspired by Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, all of the guys that we discussed a few days ago?
Mm-hmm.
But in the early 2000s, still you have some of those aspirational roles, like Limp Bizkit, Linkin Park,
Yeah.
Korn.
I saw a little bit of PTSD there.
Yeah, something not necessarily of the best of. Yeah, not the finest of the generation. But still, people got into music thanks to those acts.
Mm-hmm.
But then 2010s, something started to happen. I don't know exactly what, because at that point social media was already gigantic.
Mm-hmm.
Because right now we're basically 10 years into the future, we're still living in a very similar, if not the same world.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing has changed. The promise lies now on AI doing the big leap forward, but so far it's just been a better, and even not necessarily better, just more efficient version of what search engine has been doing for the last 30 years. So it hasn't lived up to the potential, right? So I think the aspirational role changed.
Mm-hmm.
It stopped being promoted as the musician. And I think that's the reason why you began your premise with the idea of the influencer becoming the main aspirational role that kids are growing up with.
Yeah.
The thing is that you got some influencers that are musicians, but still they are not moving people into music as they used to. For example, think of Green Day. You got plenty of people who actually bought a guitar just by listening to American Idiot.
Yeah. True.
Something happened.
Mm-hmm. Oh, many things happen.
Yes, so that's a question for the entirety of you watching. What do you think happened? I don't know, for one.
Mm-hmm.
I clearly know that something happened,
Yeah.
but I cannot put my finger on something specific.